the next elite tight end in the NFL for fantasy football. Before we talk about who this guy is going to be, we got to look at history at one of the other elite tight ends in fantasy football. In the 2018 NFL draft, the Baltimore Ravens selected tight end Hayden Hurst in the first round, but they didn't just stop there when it came to drafting tight ends. Whereas in the third round, they actually double dipped at the same position, selecting Mark Andrews out of Oklahoma, the second tight end taken in the first 3 rounds, which seems to be unheard of. But Mark Andrews went on to be, of course, the extremely successful tight end that we know of. And in his first 2 seasons, his first rookie season, put up 552 yards, and then following that up with an even more successful sophomore campaign of 852 yards, which is very similar to who our player today is actually going to be bringing a very similar stat line through his first seasons in the NFL. Our mystery player, his first season, didn't play as much as Mark Andrews did in his rookie season, but he had almost 400 yards, 355 yards as a rookie, and then 707 yards as a sophomore. So yards wise, lower than Mark Andrews, but very, very similar when it comes to percentage wise, a very similar increase that like what Mark Andrews had. And this player is going to be another guy who, just like Mark Andrews, his team took 2 tight ends in the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft, and he was actually the second tight end taken. If you haven't guessed, it is Green Bay Packers tight end Tucker Kraft. Back in 2023, the Green Bay Packers selected Luke Musgrave with their second round pick, but then double dipped at the position, selecting Tucker Kraft out of South Dakota State in the 3rd round. Very, very strange taking the same guy or taking the same position twice in the very early rounds of the draft, but they did it because they had a very similar draft grade on both players, and Tucker Kraft is now looking like a guy who's going to be a very successful fantasy option. If we're going to take a second look at his stats, 707 yards as a second-year tight end in the NFL is highly impressive. Don't let the Sam Laporta and Brock Bowers extremely impressive rookie seasons make you forget about what a normal tight end season is. This is very impressive. Looking at historical data, this is not seen by normal tight ends in their second season. And despite all these predictive trends looking good for Tucker Kraft, he's still being drafted pretty low in Underdog. The tight end 12 currently on the season as I'm recording this, behind guys like David Njoku and Evan Ingram, and just slightly ahead of the rookie Colson Loveland and the first round, honestly so far for fantasy football purposes, bust in Dalton Kincaid, and then Isaiah Likely, who is a backup tight end. The guy is still stuck behind Mark Andrews. If you have the option between Tucker Kraft and Isaiah Likely, please go ahead and take Tucker Kraft, the guy who actually has the much higher ceiling when it comes to these both tight ends. Now, looking at these rankings, I do think David Njoku is the other guy you can take from this group of tight ends who can potentially have a very successful season. Now, it's important that we are targeting these elite tight ends because if we look at our WARP graph for the tight end, now again, if you don't know what WARP is, it stands for wins over replacement player, and it tells us how much each positional ranking gives us an advantage over other lower rankings of that position. So, for example, we can see that first dot at about 1.4 on our y-axis. That represents tight end 1 on the season, and he would give us about 1.4 wins over the tight end 42 in any given season. So when we're looking at our Best Ball Mania WARP here, it tells us that those top 4 tight ends have a really, really large impact on winning. And then after you get out of that top 4, the tight ends kind of flatten out, and it doesn't make sense anymore to go ahead and spend an elite pick on the position. So when we are drafting tight ends on Underdog, we all want to look for the guys who can be that next breakout. We want the guys who can be that next boom and put themselves in that elite range of tight ends. We want to see the guys who can be a top 4 finish, because as we saw from the graph, anything lower than that, and we're just getting diminishing returns. Now, we're going to take a look at the other players that Tucker Kraft is being drafted around. We have DeAndre Swift, who is the starting running back for the Chicago Bears, who are currently trying to draft Ashton Genty as his replacement, even going as far as pretty much coming out and saying that they're looking to trade up. Hollywood Brown, who is a wide receiver 3, or I guess Rashee Rice is injured right now, so he's moving a little bit higher up Kansas City's depth chart, but not a super high upside player. You have Colston Loveland, first round tight ends, or rookie tight ends, pretty much outside of Brock Bowers coming out of the first round. Not a good historical hit rate, so it's not really a great risk to take there. Dak Prescott, I think, is a value, and then you have Jaden Higgins and CJ Stroud, both guys who, CJ Stroud, a little bit overrated after his rookie season where he didn't really put up that many points per game, but people got very excited to draft him. So that's why he got pushed up so far in Dynasty, but not an extremely impactful fantasy football asset. So if you are having a pick here in, 121 to the 127 draft pick on Underdog, and you are running a 3 tight end build, I would definitely recommend Tucker Kraft as your selection here. Even Tucker Kraft as your tight end 2 in a 2 tight end build, I think he could be really good. I think Tucker Kraft can be a player who can he can be the next Mark Andrews, like forgetting about his history being the second tight end taken in the top 3 rounds by the same team. His game is highly reminiscent of Mark Andrews on the field. He's a extra athletic possession catch tight end, but he's someone with very sure hands, catches everything that's put around him, and has a lot of physicality to get separation at the top of routes, who, even just like Mark Andrews, he's not an extremely sudden route runner, so he doesn't get separation like that, but he's someone who's very physical with linebackers, and he's too big for safeties to cover, and that's what makes him such a successful player in the NFL, and someone that I am highly excited to draft on Underdog this season. And I really think Tucker Kraft is a very good buy low in Dynasty, although looking at Keep Trade Cut, he is kind of creeping up those rankings, and the people are kind of keying in on him in Dynasty, but Underdog is where you really want to get your Tucker Kraft shares. So that's what I got for this video. So if you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you're new, and have a great day.